Hey all, and welcome back to Fuzzy Ducksy Gaming and another League Start testing video, this time looking at Tornado Shot from the very beginning. So the idea was to test Tornado Shot all the way from when you can pick it up at level 28 to all the way to being T16 viable, being able to kill the pinnacle bosses and take down some Guardians. I wanted to keep it within a budget of around 2x. The idea was to build it around just a non-corrupt 6-link that I would buy, a Death Rush ring for Onslaught, and then self-craft the rest of the gear with essences. The other part of the build would be to aim for a Stygian Vise with some LE damage on it, and then fit a Searcher Nigel in it with lots of bow damage and life. Now video is really just about my diary of the journey, discoveries and thoughts. So the idea for leveling and pretty much all the way to red maps in the end of the test was just to scale the skill damage as much as you can through non-crit variants, as it's really difficult to league start a crit bow build and get enough damage in terms of crit chance and crit multi, along with picking up life and all the other things you would need on the tree. So the idea is to run Lightning Arrow and Lightning Arrow Ballista until I pick up a couple of Chaos Orbs and Alchemies and buy the following 4 cheap uniques. So I was looking for Belt of the Deceiver, a Doomfletch Prism Bow, Wake of Destruction Boots, and Karuri Ward. Now just these 4 uniques make leveling an absolute breeze with Tornado Shot, and you can comfortably do the first 2 tiers of maps. What this means is I don't have to waste time, crafting bows, looking for gear. I can just go straight through the campaign with these 4 uniques. The reason for picking these uniques is just to get a ton of flat damage and flat LE damage into the build to let me easily go Trinity and not have to worry about balancing the elemental damage. And the entire leveling process once I picked up these items was an absolute breeze. Now the uniques aren't needed at all. It's just much easier to go Tornado Shot with these items because you do lack any sort of damage from the skill. If I didn't have these items, I would just stay with Lightning Arrow until I picked these up. I did try Tornado Shot at level 28 and it was horrible. You haven't done your first lab, so you don't have extra arrows. It's just, not a nice skill clear-wise or single target-wise. So that's the first thing I learned during the playthrough, is that it's definitely not something to equip in the first, I'd say, 5 acts of the game. I picked up the currency I needed by the end of Act 6, and then I purchased the unique items, and then it was a breeze from there. In terms of trees, really I took a tree similar to Havoc's LE leveling bows, except instead of pathing up towards lightning damage and aura wheel, I specced into the closest aura wheel and then went out of the gladiator and fury bolts. I did eventually respec to go up the tree once my levels were higher, and I had a good lightning damage bow to make use of all of the lightning nodes at the top of the tree and the non-crit lucky lightning damage mastery. So once I hit maps, my goal was to get a 5-link either through harvest or trade, and with a 5-link I felt pretty comfortable pushing to early tier yellow maps. Now at this stage, the uniques that I had early on start to basically become redundant, which is why I say you don't need them when you're league starting, and if you don't want to spend 2 or 3 chaos to get those items to make leveling it smoother, then don't do it, because once you get sort of even tier 4, tier 5 maps, the bow is basically just a bow with some flat damage and maybe 100 to 150 of each elemental element. It's really good for leveling because it easily keeps up Trinity, but you are going to see the damage fall off really, really quickly. So once I got my 4 or 5 link, it was then a case of trying to get some lightning essences to craft a bow. The reason, as I say, I want to go mainly lightning damage is so I can path up and take a lot of the lightning nodes that increase the DPS. In terms of Atlas trees, I decided to pass straight to Breach, just to see what it was like early on, and I will come on to that in a later section. So once I had my 5 link, it was really pretty comfortable doing white and yellow maps. So from here, it was a case of grinding maps and breaches, because that's what I took, to get the currency to buy the unique ring just so I can drop the onslaught nodes, and then put money aside to get a 6 link, which last league was around 70 chaos for a dexterity base. After I got the breach nodes, I then decided to go towards strong boxes and essences. Strong boxes because I know they consistently make money, especially when you get the operative ones, and essences because I was going to need essences to get my gear crafted nice and cheap. Overall, the build actually felt a lot nicer than I thought it would, and once I got to level 86, 87 and was happy with the gear and in an okay place, I then just decided just to try some T14, the 16 maps and Conqueror maps, just to see if it could even tackle them. So overall, the single target does lack a little bit, but there is obviously a ceiling on damage when I'm not scaling crit. So the last thing I then decided to add it to the build, because I was starting to run out of passive points other than life, and I think if you're trying to stack damage and get your Atlas clear, you have to kind of settle on not having a huge amount of life from the tree. So the last thing I decided to pick up was a Lionized Glare Jewel. They were really cheap at League Start last league, but that was because uniques were like dropping out the sky because of the league mechanic. Might not be the case, but I picked one up because they were like 4 to 5C at League Start, stuck it in, and then it allowed me to take some of the Claw Wheel to get more bow damage and attack speed. Overall, it was around 12 hours to get the build to the state it's in. It can do T16 maps, it can do Guardian maps, but I wouldn't say it's super comfortable, and horrible map mods can make the maps really, really difficult early on. So when you're corrupting your maps to get completion, if you get stuff like, extra monster life, lots of early resistances, bosses can become really, really tough. And I did certainly die on more than 1, 2, 3, 4, well, let's say 20 odd occasions. So the one thing I was really unsure about for this build, and I'm still a bit puzzled, is when I look at it on PoE Ninja, some people go point blank, some people go far shot, some people go both. At this stage, it probably doesn't matter that much because I don't have a huge amount of damage and I don't have lots of extra arrows. And on testing all 3 variants, repeatedly running Forge of the Phoenix, I didn't really notice much difference between the 3 single target wise. So if I did decide to League Start, I think I would just go with point blank and then take the hex nodes for the ascendancy rather than going up and getting fast shot. Reason for this is most map bosses you're going to stay fairly close to. And even though the secondary projectiles add more travel distance on, you do still get a decent damage increase from point blank that seems like it makes it worth taking. So in terms of my Atlas progression this time round, let's talk about Rushing Breach. And in all honesty, it was a mistake and I'm glad I tried it. Early on, it's actually really difficult to get the damage and clear speed combination to clear the breaches efficiently once you go and pick up Flash Breach. The other issue, which might not be next league, is that this Atlas iteration, nearly all of the lower tier maps are enclosed in tight spaces with little corridors, and it just means breaches are firstly wasted because you've got a lot of space that can't be filled because there's nothing there, and they're really difficult to clear because you're having to go between loads of different corridors, and when it's Flash Breach, they're not up for very long. Now, I did pick up, I'd say, a decent amount of splinters and breach rings. I probably made like 40 to 50C profit from the breach side of things, but that was in a couple of hours, and I feel there's much better ways to use your Atlas points early on. As I mentioned, I then went over to strong boxes and essences, and then it felt better, especially strong boxes. When you get your operative strong boxes, you get scarabs, get lots of currency from different things. It just felt a really consistent way of making profit. So overall, the character is almost 100% spell suppression capped. I just need to pick something up on either gloves or boots. It's got decent evasion, very mediocre life, decent clear speed, and just about acceptable single target damage. The one thing I think that would put me off doing this build at League Star is not my experience here. I actually really enjoyed it and think it was really smooth to get to this stage. It's how much you're going to have to spend to get to the next stage, get away from a non-crit variant to go into crit, because you're going to have to get crit on gear, you're going to have to respec your tree. Most people that I've seen will then go to cold, so they'll go 6-link Heroes Ire, which are like 400 or 500 chaos at League Start. You need, a quiver with extra arrows, you need a bow with extra arrows, and this is where the build then starts to require a ton of investment to then start progressing even further. So I think if you're a player that's going to play, 10 hours or whatever a day at League Start, it'd be no problem League starting this sort of build. If, however, you don't have that much time, I think you'd have a really, really bad time League starting as Ellie Bows. So what I'll do is just run through the final tree and final gear for where I am at level 87. I think there's a bit of downtime in here, so I think it's about 12 hours played because I've been AFK and I used this character to record the meme video that I did the other day. It was around 12 hours to get to this stage. So I'll go through the tree first and then we'll run through the gear. So the tree is essentially just taking damage where we can and then filling it out with a bit of life and spell suppression. So we come out of the projectile damage nodes into Aspect to the Eagle. Down here, ideally I would like to go down here for life, but I don't have either the mana or the stats to be able to drop these nodes. Then taking the Ellie damage and resistances through the spell suppression section just to make use of this node here, because that's also extra spell suppression. Then it's pretty standard. It's life, Ellie wheel, projectile speed and damage, projectile speed mastery here with bows. We've got Culling Strike and chance to gain frenzy on marked enemies. Just the attack speed of the bow wheel and damage. Come down here and get Acuity because it's really good for accuracy and attack speed. And then Dex accuracy bonus given +3 to accuracy just basically means it's very difficult for me not to be able to have my accuracy over my life. So if we have a look at my accuracy at the moment, Main hand accuracy is 4,300, so I'm nearly 1,000 over. And that's really important because it's about a 20% to 25% damage loss if this node doesn't proc. Then we've gone up taking spell suppression along with chance to suppress if we've got evasion or gear, which I do. Take some life, LE damage, grace mastery. This is where I've slotted the Lion Ice Fall to then take these into bow nodes. Some leech and some damage when leeching because this build is super mana heavy, so you are always leeching when you're attacking. Taking 2 life masteries to boost the life up because it is very low. Ghost Dance just for that extra bit of EHP, but obviously it's not massive because you've only got 400 energy shield. Bit of life here, up to the mana reservation nodes here, and then these lightning nodes here, along with lightning damage that isn't a crit is lucky, because lightning has a massive range. Lucky basically rolls it twice, so you'll get a much higher output of your lightning damage. And the reason I've done that, as we'll come on to gear now, is I've been rolling my bow with Wrath Essences. So whatever bow I ended up with was going to have big lightning damage on it, and that's why I've gone for that node. I ended up with a really, really nice bow, actually. It's got attack speed, 3 lots of damage, and then I've crafted strength and dex and accuracy, just again for stats and to help with that accuracy rating. The helmet is pretty bad, bog standard, life and resistances, and not even a good one. The Toxic Rain doesn't mean anything, it's just that was the best one that it offered me in Uberlab. Simple career reward just for the movement speed and extra projectile speed and damage. And obviously because of the mastery, this increased projectile speed also gets applied to increase damage. The quiver was just crafted again with essences. Ended up pretty good, fair bit of damage, resistances and crafted life, and overall a decent boost to attack speed. A Death Rush ring to get onslaught on kill, lots of accuracy, bit of life, and some chaos res, never hurts. And then the second ring is just to get as many resistances as I can into the build. The chest itself, ignore the grace and flask things on it. This is the only 6 ink I had, and I didn't want to interact with trade at this stage of the league. And I've essentially rolled this chest with life essences. I did get lucky. I got some spell suppression, which I wasn't aiming for, but it's a nice bonus. I really just wanted life, res, and an open prefix to craft the extra life as ES. The gloves, just a gripped gloves that I picked up. Again, essence crafted. It's not particularly great, but it does the job. Boots, I think I did these off the ground. They're fairly decent because they've got 30% movement speed and high life, but then not much else going for it. It's low resistances, and I've crafted some stats on there because I was starting to really struggle for int and strength. Stygian Vise, again, crafted with resistance essences, I think this time. I was just really rolling it till I get half decent life and an open prefix to craft LE damage with attacks. Found a Search and Nigel that's got decent damage to bows and attacks. It's not amazing, it's sort of T3, T4 across the board, but it does actually give a really good boost. Before this, I was running Belt of the Deceiver for the Intimidate and, extra life, extra resistances. But this definitely, I would say, just about surpasses it damage-wise. And I can obviously fit more resistances and stuff into it. And then I think I've covered the gear. The only other thing I've got is an Anoint on the amulet, which is Divine Judgment for 50% increased LE damage. Is fairly cheap. I think it's a black oil and 2 worthless oils to get that crafted. Not really finished with my flask yet. I've not started crafting these. I've been quite lazy. But it's a granite, jade, sulfur. Probably not ideal. It's just what I ran in the campaign and I've still got it. Quicksilver and a life flask. So as you can see, the gear is nothing amazing. My gems haven't hit 20 yet. Also, in a lot of the footage, because I'm an idiot, for some reason, I wasn't running inspiration and LE damage with attacks. I was running 2 LE damage with attacks gems. So I was essentially missing a link for my 6 link. So when I went 5 link to 6 link, I didn't actually because I put the wrong gem in. And it was only in the last hour that I noticed and put the correct gem in. And then the build started to feel a little bit better. But that's it for the gear and the tree. There's going to be a couple of POBs in the video description. But what I'll do now is just move on to how I felt the build performed as a league start and if it's something that I feel like I'm going to go with next league. So I think if I wanted to play Tornado Shot as a character for a few weeks, I would definitely consider league starting with LE bows. as you can definitely do it. It's just the fact that you are going to need a lot of currency early on to push it to really be comfortable kind of bossing and doing those high tier content. Now, within the video description, there's a leveling pod that I used and then different trees that I went to at different stages because I did try quite a few different things out. Now, I'm certainly not making this video to encourage people to league start this. It was purely to test how it felt. Now, me personally, if I want to play bows, I am tempted to league start with it because they are super, super fun. The clear is good and you can do most map tiers really comfortably. But I think it's all going to be dependent on how much I think I'm going to be able to play in the first 3 days and how hard I want to go at it. If I'm really, really kind of zoned in and I want to go and farm constantly, be really quick in and out and just be really motivated, I think I might league start it. If, however, I want to do something that's a bit more laid back, it's not something I'm going to look into because it does cost a ton of currency to then get it to the next stage. So I think, in summary, experienced players could, 100% league start with this kind of build. But for people with less experience and less knowledge about not only the game and the mechanics, but how to really, really make decent money early on and be comfortable crafting your own gear, I think it would be a pretty bad time. So that's it for this video. I've tested it really as far as I want to because I don't really want to go purchasing loads of items like the Heroes are and all that sort of stuff and see how it goes because it's really, I wanted to see how it would fare getting just to the pinnacle boss stage for the first time. And it was okay. So I may take one more build to maps before league start, but it all depends on whether there's lots of changes in the patch notes because I do plan on bringing an updated lightning strike guide out. And if there's changes that affect that build, then obviously a lot of my time is going to be taken running through that and trying to flesh out the best way to build the character. That's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you made it this far, take care and see you in the next video.